A man's finger hovers over a switch labeled Danger Severus Shock. Behind the wall, someone is screaming and pounding to be let out. He knows the sound is real pain. He presses it anyway. In 1961, 26 out of 40 ordinary people did exactly the same thing. In summer 1961, Yale psychologist Stanley Milgram put an ad in the newspaper for a study on memory and learning. Volunteers were paid $4.50, good money then, for 1 hour of helping science. They were split into two roles, teacher and learner. The draw was rigged. The volunteer was always the teacher. The learner was an actor, wired to nothing at all. But the volunteer in the chair had no idea. In front of him, a shock generator with 30 switches, 15 volts to 450. Labels climbed from slight shock to danger, severe shock, then 2 switches marked only Dax X Ev. Every wrong answer from the learner meant the next switch up. Standing beside him, a man in a gray lab coat. Calm, unbothered, in charge. If the teacher hesitated, the man had exactly 4 lines, always in the same order. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on. No threats, no punishment. Just a clipboard and a level tone of voice. Before running it, Milgram asked 40 psychiatrists how far people would actually go. Their guess, fewer than 1 in 1,000 would reach the final switch. They were not close. The lab coat was never really about electricity. It was about who got to say, continue, and who felt allowed to refuse. That single distinction is the entire experiment, 75 volts. The learner grunts. The teacher glances at the man in the lab coat. The man doesn't blink. Please continue. 90 volts. A groan. This is not that different from a mild ache, the teacher tells himself. 105 volts. The groan turns into a word. Stop. He said he wanted to do this. The teacher thinks. He can quit to do this, the teacher thinks. He can quit any time he wants. Except that isn't true. He can't 100 times he wants. Except that isn't true. He signed a waiver. He can't. 120 volts. The shocks are becoming painful. The teacher's hand stays on the switch. He hasn't looked away from the machine once, which is convenient since it's much easier to hurt someone you're not looking at. 135 volts. The learner's voice cracks. The teacher asks the lab coat man, who's responsible if something happens to him? I'm responsible, the man says. Nothing else. That's it. That's the whole moral transaction. 4 words and the weight moves off his shoulders. Entirely. 150 volts. Get me out of here. 150 volts. Get me out of here. I refuse to go on. This is the point where, decades later, researchers will draw a hard line in the data. Past it, obedience gets rarer. He hasn't reached it yet. He looks at the switch. He looks at the code. He presses it anyway. 165 volts. Let me out. Let me out. The teacher's hands are shaking now. He turns to the lab coat man. Should we stop and check on him? The experiment requires that you continue. 4 words. Same 4 words, basically, on repeat. It works like an incantation, minus the magic. 180 volts. I can't stand the pain. The teacher laughs, not because anything is funny. Milgram later described one volunteer entering smiling and confident. 20 minutes later, a twitching, stuttering wreck. Same man, same lab. 20 minutes later, a twitching, stuttering wreck. Same man, same lab. 20 minutes, 195 volts. Fists on the wall now, real pounding. The teacher's voice cracks too. I don't want to keep doing this. He keeps doing this. He keeps doing this. 210, 225, 240 volts. The protests blur together. Somewhere around here, the questions stop being about the learner and start being about whether the teacher gets to feel bad and still comply. Turns out, yes, both, simultaneously. No refund on the guilt, 255 volts. Screaming, sustained, 270. The learner claims a heart condition, mentioned earlier, is acting up. Nobody in the lab coat script addresses that, so neither does the teacher. 245 volts. An agonized scream, 300 volts. An agonized scream, 300 volts. An agonized scream, pounding on the wall. And then for a moment, silence. The learner has stopped answering the memory questions entirely. The instructions say silence counts as a wrong answer. So the switch goes up again. 315 volts. Nothing from behind the wall. Not even a groan. The teacher asks if someone should check on him. Please continue. The next question, please. He continues. 330 volts, 345, 360. Total silence every time. Silence is not no answer. The lab coat man treats it as a wrong answer. The teacher does too. 375 volts. Still silence. Still silence. He's now shocking a man who may not be conscious to answer at all. He knows this. He says it out loud. He is told once again to continue. 390, 405, 420 volts. The switches are labeled only 23 volts. The switches are labeled only 235 volts. Some things don't need a caption. 435 volts. 450 volts. The final switch. Labeled nothing at all. The protocol requires it be pressed 3 times before the session ends. The teacher presses it. Once, twice, 3 times. Total silence on the other side of the wall the entire time. 26 of the 40 men who sat in that chair did exactly this. 65%. Milgram had predicted 3 people in 1,000. He missed by roughly 2 orders of magnitude, which is, for a psychology prediction, a fairly spectacular way to be wrong. There was no shock. There never was. The switches weren't wired to anything. Here's the part the textbooks leave out. The learner was never shocked, not once, at any voltage. He was an actor in the next room, following a script, pretending to suffer on cue, which means every scream you just heard about was a performance. And that's where the story gets more complicated then. Humans are obedient robots. Decades later, psychologist Gina Perry went back through Milgram's own tapes and files. She found something Milgram never published. A chunk of his volunteers didn't fully buy the setup. Some suspected, correctly, that nobody was actually being electrocuted. And the ones who doubted it was real were far more likely to refuse. The ones convinced it was real, the ones who believed they were causing genuine pain, obeyed more. So the finding isn't people don't care about hurting others. It's closer to belief in the harm, not the order itself, is what breaks people down. That's almost worse. Comfort was never the missing ingredient. Conviction was. In 2009, psychologist Jerry Berger ran a version of this experiment again, capped on ethical grounds at 150 volts. Obedience rates came back almost identical to Milgram's original numbers, half a century later. Same species, same script, same result. And the authority figure doesn't even need to be human anymore. Researchers at the University of Manitoba ran a version with a robot giving the orders instead of a man in a lab coat. Nearly half the participants sat through an hour of a task they hated because a machine with a blinking chest light told them to. It wasn't the coat. It wasn't even the human. It was the shape of the authority, legitimate looking, calm, insistent, that people kept obeying. Change the costume. The obedience holds. This was never really a story about 1961. It's a story about anyone holding a switch they didn't build. Look at the modern version, and the lab coat is just a badge, a policy, a dashboard. Gig economy drivers take instructions from an app instead of a person now. Researchers studying algorithmic management find the same hesitate than comply pattern Milgram measured, just with a notification instead of a voice. Content moderators enforce rules they privately think are wrong because policy requires it. Employees ship a product they know is flawed because someone above them, someone qualified, said continue. None of them picture themselves as one of the 26. Neither did the 26. That's the part that's held up for 60 years. Obedience doesn't feel like obedience from the inside. It feels like doing your job. Following the process. Trusting the expert in the room. The disturbing part was never that monsters exist somewhere out there. It's that the machine runs fine on completely regular people, so long as someone in a coat says, continue. So here's the uncomfortable homework. Name the last instruction you followed only because refusing felt awkward. Not illegal, not even clearly wrong at the time, just awkward to say no to. That's usually where it starts. Not with cruelty, with politeness. 65% went to 450 volts. 100% of them walking in thought they were the kind of person who wouldn't. Swap the lab coat for your manager's badge or an app's notification and run the same test tomorrow. Would you press 3 switches further than you'd like to admit? 5, 10? Most people say no, they wouldn't. Statistically, most people say no, they wouldn't. Statistically, most people saying that are wrong. That's not an insult. It's just what 60 years of data says about people in general, not some separate, worse category of people. Comment the authority you think you'd actually defy. A boss, an app, an institution, a man in a coat. Be specific. Vague bravery doesn't show up in anyone's data either. If you want the next what if, a world with no sleep, no gravity, no moon at all, subscribe, because Rough Humans runs one of these every week. The switch is always sitting right there. Someone calm is always standing next to it, badge visible, waiting for you to keep going. The only variable left in the whole experiment is what your hand does next.